Hello! In this session, we will learn how to create and use components, and how to use auto layout. These are two concepts that are absolutely essential to make Figma easier and faster to use. We will come back to the high-fidelity mockup that we made last session, and by the end, we will be able to apply the concepts of auto layout and components to our mockup, which will save us a lot of time in the long run. This video is part of a series of learning UI/UX design concepts and how to use Figma along the way. We started with a blank canvas, made it into a wireframe, and then turned that wireframe to a high-fidelity mockup. So if you haven't watched those sessions yet, I highly recommend to start with them first. Now let's get into it. Let's first talk about auto layout and begin with an example. Say we want to change the text here to instead say add new image instead of just image. In the current process, we would have to manually move all of the other elements to the right so it fits the new text. Let's restart the process and select all the elements to add the auto layout from the right. This adds a frame with the elements inside. Let's try editing the text again. Now it knows how to react with the other elements, and it's as simple as moving a slider to adjust the spacing. In a real situation, this is used frequently, especially if the website would be, for example, in different languages. The different text elements across languages would have different widths, and auto layout would handle it well. As you can see, with auto layout, we're letting Figma know how these elements are supposed to interact with each other, and how Figma should fit them inside the frame when the content changes. It's so fast to make changes to our design on the fly. There are other use cases and options we can talk about, but let's move on for now to components. Looking at the page, we can see that there are lots of elements that are repeated and copied and pasted when we were making the high-fidelity mockup. Let's identify which parts of this page can be turned into components. This, and also this. You'll see any repeated element on our page we can make into components. Now you might think, why do we have to turn these into components? The answer lies with the efficiency and ease of maintenance. Let me show you. Let's work with the Reels area. Let's isolate the first component and group it. To turn elements into a component, we can select everything, right-click, and select Create Component. Now this becomes the parent component, which all other copies will base off of. You can tell this is the parent component because of the 4 diamond icon on the top left. To create a copy, it's as simple as copy and pasting. And now we have a copy of the component. If we make any changes to the main component, it reflects on all of the other components. So we can easily identify it in our canvas, we create a frame that contains all of our main components. This is done so that we know visually and at a glance which of the items are the original components. Great! Let's take a deeper look at what we can do with components. We see in the Reels area, we have different text that represent the username of the profile. We can make it easy to change this by creating a component property. Take a look. We go to the parent component and select our text. On the properties on the right, we can see the content of the text and a button next to it. Let's click it to make it a component property. This is a username, so I change the name to fit it. I keep the default value and click Create Property. Now if I create a copy of the component, I can change the component's username property from the right side easily. And because of auto layout and all of the other settings, the new username is properly handled. Let's go back to the Reels area. We can see that only one of the components has the plus button, but it's still the same component as the others. This is where variants come in. I'm going to right-click the parent component, and under Main Component, I select Add Variant. Immediately, we see a purple box enclosing the two variants of a component. For the next variant, I want to remove the plus button. It's as easy as deleting it, and the layouting handles the changes. Now when we have a child component, we can set the variant here along with the other component properties. We can rename it to something more relevant. Let's add another variant for how the component is going to look like if the feature has been clicked or seen by the user. I want it to be less colorful and just have a gray outline. I just add a new variant and change the color. Now we have all the variants we need to complete the features area like this. Let's move it out of the way and recreate it with a component that we've made. Another way to access our components is through the Assets tab on the left panel. Under Local Components, we can drag and drop the component we want and create the copy. Now we access the variants for the other type without the plus button. To change the profile image, we override it on the child component directly. Overrides made to the child component will not affect the parent component and other child components. We just drag and drop the image just as before. Easy. We do this for all the other copies. Going back to the concept of auto layout, let's make this into auto layout. Now we can change the spacing between the elements easily. We can also add vertical or horizontal padding if we need to. We can also tell it which direction we want the elements to be in. I'll continue making the features area until the content clips the frame. There's one more thing we could do with auto layouts, and it's to do with stacking elements. Let's go to the profile images of people who like this post. We can add auto layout to these elements. Then we can make the spacing negative, which makes the elements stack. If we look at advanced options, we can set the auto layout to consider the strokes as part of the spacing. And we can even change the stacking technique from first on top to last on top with just one option. And one more thing about components. Say for example we make changes to the child component. This means that some changes to the main parent might not reflect anymore on the child component. To reset the changes, we can right-click the child component and select Reset All Changes. This syncs all the properties back to the parent component. And that's the basics of auto layouts and components. Auto layout and components go hand in hand when it comes to upping your efficiency and productivity when using Figma, and to get your idea out there as fast as possible. And that's it for this session. Leave your comments below if you have any questions or if you want to add anything to the discussion. And if you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up. We still have more Figma coming up, so subscribe and hit the bell icon to keep updated when the next video is up. See you on the next video.